So what was the favorite dab at Dabadoo the other day? Did you
We don't know. We wait to find out because like the Americans that were putting it all on left the building so quick. We don't even know if there was a winner. They all jumped on flights to get the hell out of Europe.
Well, what did you think won?
Oh, well, I had 21 dabs and there was 3 different categories. I hope number 2 won because there's no labels. It was S1, S2, it was N1, N2, and it was rosin 1, rosin 2. So we never did find out, but I'm sure they'll put it online somewhere in a post-apocalyptic world when everybody gets back to their social media and does shit. Maybe we'll be all like emaciated by then because we haven't had food or water for 2 weeks, and maybe we never catch corona but we get malnutrition. I don't know what's going to happen.
So that second one that you liked, what did you like about it?
Well, I thought that because it was solvent extracts, then solventless, and then rosin. So, I mean, I'm not much of a connoisseur, but that number 2 was like a diamonds, they call it, quite crystally, and it was just really an amazing high. It was almost psychedelic, but it was also only the second one that we had.
So it gets quite subjective after that, you know, when you're trying to figure out whether Dab 14 worked cool or not. It's a very subjective thing because the 10th one is only just kicking in, you know. So for me, number 2 was just the sheer beauty of it as bud porn, as diamonds, as sludge, as a terpene source. If you went to Dabadoo 5 years ago, it wouldn't exist as a concept. It would just be shatters and waxes. But now they've got this whole terp sauce thing going down.
It was that snotty resin super stuff, the live rosin.
They're all live runs. All of this is live run stuff because you can, if you're growing indoors, you can do it all the time. You just pull it off the tree and whack it in a rosin press. The rosin was absolutely white. It was literally blonde.
It looked like coconut.
And we've never seen that before in its purity, and I've never been a fan of rosin because it always gives me a scratchy throat because of all the waxes and stuff in it. But by then we'd done like 20 dabs, so it was whatever, we just kept doing it, and it was much tastier than the solvents because I reckon they're pulling those solvents and then they're adding terpenes to it. And you know what, some of it tasted just like Gent's lavatory toilet freshener at times. It was just too good to be true. There's no way it could be that lemony. It was like corona hand virus hand wash stuff. Maybe it was.
So how advanced is the oil extraction scene in South Africa? It seems like you guys are pretty hip.
Yeah, no, it's pretty advanced. You know, you've just got to leave it to the youngsters and YouTube, and it's going to become a craze. So there's a lot of people who take their concentrates very, very seriously, but it was kind of born out of the whole medicine thing. You know, in the beginning, when we first sued the government, we had absolutely no idea about concentrates or even medicine for that. Then Rick Simpson came along, and then thank goodness, as human beings, we actually evolve as a species. So we've evolved with this whole cannabis thing, from Rick Simpson sludgy stuff in a syringe to the stuff that looks literally like diamonds. We saw some earlier today that they crushed it on the back of a cell phone, and yeah, some people call it the crack of cannabis. They crushed this crystal and then sprinkled that onto a spliff. So it really has evolved to this whole menu of concentrates which are actually better for you, but it is a different high. So yeah.
I love it as a subculture. It's my favourite. Dabs are here to stay. I dig the people that do it. And if you looked around Dabadoo that evening, your people were taking it seriously. They had rigs out. They sat there and they knew they were going to be there for the long haul for 6 hours. They got comfy. They brought their dab mats and all their wands and their tools and their gas torches and loads of earbuds and shit. And they spent loads of time feverishly cleaning their rigs before the next dab. And we've got a dab rig that we travel with, this tiny little beaker, and we did 40 dabs in this little beaker and it's still not clean. So South African Customs are actually they're going to want to see that on the way out.
I've got some alcohol at the house.
Fantastic, there you have it. Trust the cameraman. They always have alcohol and shit.
Well, I got it for Corona Panic this morning at the panic buying at the grocery store.
Okay, how was that? We haven't done that yet.
It was fine. It was a little crowded, but it's mellow here. It wasn't like the superstores. The big stores in the suburbs, that's where
the one supermarket we went into the suburbs had absolutely no meat left, and the frozen pizza section was also empty, but the rest of it was all fine. We've got bananas and potato chips and some biscuits and pastries back at the apartment, and chocolate.
How's the load shedding hitting the African grow scene, you know?
I had a message from my mother yesterday, and Pretoria was hit with 6 hours yesterday. You know, it's quite a thing. With the grow scene, it really, really is hitting people hard because you've got two choices. Either you're going to adapt and get enough solar power and generators and fuel for your generators and invest in the capital, or your crop is just going to fuck up. So, because it's not going to go away anytime soon. Our government said it's going to last for 18 months from the beginning of this year. So, what can we do? Sometimes it's okay for 2-3 weeks, but you never know when it's going to hit again. They can say in the morning, okay, load shedding's happening tonight. So, you've just got to spend the money on getting backup power to your grow, or grow outside.
For the folks back home, load shedding is this euphemism for we took all the money, now there isn't any infrastructure, so there isn't any electricity. And it happens basically a third of the day, mostly 8 hours out of 24 in 4-hour sections. Everyone's plants are stressing out, herming out. If you put a 12-watt solar in there that kicks in, then keeps the fans going, you stand a fighting chance. But there's so much powdery mildew around because of the sheer heat in these rooms that are not generating enough aircon, because the maths of running an indoor grow as a 6x6 with no electricity is pretty horrendous when it comes to buying a generator. It's a big generator and people just don't have that kind of money. So it's a serious issue, but people are working around it. We can't wait to get back to load shedding. It sounds like paradise after fucking lockdown in Barcelona. This is like, I don't know, it's like a sequel to something.
Yeah.
It is.
It's a dumb movie.
It is, completely.
And it's the last thing, this September 2020, like, what kind of law is going to come out of that whole mess?
I don't think there will be a law in September 2020. I reckon it's just this line in the sand where the next phase will start. And it won't be home and dry in September 2020. That's the 2 years that the government's been given by the Constitutional Court to change the offensive part of the 1992 Drugs Act pertaining to cannabis. They might start the process, but right now we haven't even seen a public document. So they've only got a few months to go, and that public document has got to be in circulation for months. And then they have to craft something around it. But what they want and what we want is still very, very different. And hot off the press news, our legal team in the last 48 hours has actually requested to set down the trial of the plant again in 2021, because if we don't get what we want, we're going to take them back to court and sue the arse off them and get what we want, because at the moment the only thing that's on the table from the government has got Canadian written all over it. If I handed a joint to a 17-year-old, I would get 14 years in jail with this. It's called the Control of Cannabis Bill. That should give you a good idea of what they're after. 50 seeds, a year in jail, 100 seeds, 2 years in jail, and it goes up and up and up. 40 centimetre plant wide, 60 centimetres high, times 6 in Africa. I mean, it's horse shit, it really is. They are absolutely delusional that they could possibly think about policing people's grows in Africa. So what they want and what they want to keep in control, because remember, we never get asked about schizophrenia, children, mental disease, anything anymore. Everyone wants to know the bottom line, how much it's going to be worth, how much we think it should be taxed, which isn't much, because if they tax it, we'll still be on the black market forevermore. So September 2020 is like this line in the sand that something will happen.
It's like a court date when you have a case that goes on forever.
They will table something will happen. In secret, we hear that they're trying to figure out controlling it like alcohol, but in the cannabis control bill, they're not controlling anything. They're controlling it fully, and there will be no trade for people like us, the cannabis culture, that kept it all together in the first place.
But doesn't the private things still supersede all that?
Well, the private thing will go whatever happens. We're not waiting for 2020. We're not waiting for anything, put it that way. They can do what they want. We are doing what we're doing. The cannabis culture in South Africa is really buoyant.